It's Tuesday. I checked. It's Tuesday, April 28th. It's the 28th day of April 2026. I'm Doug Hagmann. Welcome to the Hagmann Report. I have a really great show lined up for you today. To give you an idea, too, last week, I think maybe we were expecting Michael, Jan, and Steve. So this Thursday, just mark this in your calendar. It's not often I get to say this ahead of time with this degree of certainty. Michael Jan is going to be on here with Steve Quells. Oh, man, it's going to be a great show. Yeah. That's this coming Thursday. Boy, where do we start, right? With all kinds of news, we're not going to do a lot of news. In fact, we're going to talk about maybe old news. You know what? What do you do when old business is not taken care of? Do you go to new business or do you take care of old business? I think we do both. We take care of new and old business, but in kind of a little bit, something I wanted to address and something I wanted to do for quite some time is have Susan Daniels on tonight. Now, if you don't know who Susan Daniels is, she's a legend. And, people are described that way, right? What did she do? Well, a woman after my own heart. She is a private investigator, credentialed private investigator in the state of Ohio. And if you remember, if that name sounds familiar, there's two reasons why it should. She wrote a book, The Rubbish Hauler's Wife versus Barack Obama. That's available on Amazon. I purchased this book 3 years ago. Folks, it's a marvelous book. It's actually pulling it at about 4.5 stars. I'm telling you what, it's a good book. She's on with me. But here's the kind of the core, the crux of the issue. The something I want to talk about tonight. Something that's been on my mind, on my heart, and something I know Susan Daniels can absolutely relate to. In fact, we spoke about it I don't know when it was, this weekend or last week. How many people out there who are in the workforce, I'll just say in the workforce, have never lived without a cell phone? Think about that for a second. How many people out there how many law enforcement agencies have never worked a case without AFIS, the automated fingerprint system, index system? How many law enforcement agencies and detectives never worked without CODIS, DNA? Why is that even important? Why is that a thing? Well, the reliance on technology, the reliance on these, I'm going to call them support mechanisms, as opposed to the places to go to solve crimes and to get answers. No. And I intimated, I think I spoke about this last week, how important it is for someone to know and understand what you are. For example, if you're looking at, I spoke about researching supplements, right? And I'll use that as an example. You can have your supplements thrown at you. Here, take these, or medications, or whatever it might be. Why are you taking them? Well, I don't know. Just told me to take them. It's not critically important for you to understand why you're taking them. If a person you trust and admire and love and is giving them to you. But wouldn't it be better to understand why you're taking them? Maybe that was a bad example. I think on the whole of things, we as a society have lost the ability to think for ourselves. I wrote some notes here digitally. Yeah. Hang on a second here. Just some notes I wanted to hit here. Well, technology is a tool. It's not a replacement for the absolute messy, exhausting work of being there. Whether you're a detective or investigating something or just seeking the truth of a matter, but especially in investigations. Too many investigators right now have outsourced their instincts to what I would call the machine, the apparatus. They wait for DNA to come back instead of talking to, for example, the widow. They trust algorithms' likely match instead of noticing the tremor, maybe in a suspect's voice when he says, "Well, yeah, I was at the gym." People have not learned to read other people. People have, detectives, investigators, the modern day type, many have opted not to get off their backsides, knock on doors, burn some shoe leather. And you may say, well, you know what? It's not that important because we have these tools available. Why not use those tools? Yes, you can use them, but wouldn't it be better to use them as an adjunct, perhaps as maybe a verification, as opposed to the primary source of your findings? We settle for things like cell phone pings and genetic genealogy and surveillance from every doorbell in America, for crying out loud. The facial recognition, and as I mentioned, CODIS. It's really a miracle when it works, and it does. But see, to me, there is tech everywhere, but justice is only somewhere. Let me say that again. Tech is everywhere. Justice is somewhere. Tech everywhere, justice somewhere. I wanted to talk about this and the issues with Barack Obama, because we're not done with him yet. No one should be done with him yet. His prodigy, when I say prodigy, his understudy, well, his bookmark, I guess, Joseph Biden, and everything that was spawned by Barack Hussein Obama. And there's one person who did not rely necessarily on tech, who did not rely on the easy way of doing things. She did things the hard way, the old-fashioned way. We're going to talk about the old times, too, a little bit. But we're going to talk about Barack Obama. We're going to talk about some other issues. She has a fantastic Substack. Eric, if you want to put her Substack up, folks, you got to go there and read some of the articles. Her information is sourced. I mean, absolutely sourced. Her investigations are deep. They're not, these talking points. I can tell you this. Susan has, and keep that up there, Eric, if you don't mind. Excuse me. Susan has, now she's on audio only today. Just want to tell you that. Susan has worked. In fact, I've asked her to do a few things for me, and she has done them in a manner that only she can do. Again, no need for geofencing and no shortcuts. And when she turned over the information, in fact, she worked. I'm not going to, if she wants to talk about it, I'll let her talk about the various cases. But the fact of the matter is, when I get information back from her, it is like solid. I don't have to double check her work. So that's not the introduction. That's just the way it is. Again, now Susan is going to be appearing by audio only. So we'll keep the Substack newsletter up there right now. And we'll just go to Susan right now. Susan, it's good to not see you, good to hear you, good to have you. How are you? I'll tell you what, last time I think you were in the studio with Jack, right? Or no? All right, Jack Cashel. And by the way, mutual friend, Jack Cashel, tremendous author, and also a Substack publisher. But Susan Daniels, a tremendous investigator, someone I admire, and a great author too. Folks, if you haven't done so already, the link for her book will be in the program description box. It's a good read. Grab it. Grab yourself a copy. There it is on screen. And there's a much younger, is that you, Susan? Come on now.
That's me 50 years ago.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm glad to have you. We can certainly talk about the book. We can talk about the articles in your Substack. But what do you think about today's investigator, Susan?
They're terrible. They're terrible. They get on the computer and they run the searches, and then they write a report, and they overcharge their client and do a lousy job so that the people never hire private investigators again.
I'm going to tell you what, I've seen, you and I, we've both seen it. You've been an investigator for how long now?
33 years.
33 years. So I got you by a few years, but not much. The experience is there. And folks, boys, just stay tuned because you're going to hear some really interesting stuff. Okay. Wow. What made you, I got to ask you, how'd you get into that 33 years ago?
I got into it by accident. I needed a job, and having been fired from the one I previously had, and somebody came to me and said, I have a friend that's a private investigator, and he could use you for a couple of days. Well, my background was such that it really fit into private investigation. I had worked for the Plain Dealer as a stringer for 15 or 17 years. So I had done tons of interviews, and because I worked for the Plain Dealer, I also had access to reporters and the library. So I also was a certified paralegal, and had a degree in English, and I just had all the qualifications. I didn't realize that everything I had lent itself to private investigations. And I got it by accident. And in Ohio, I don't know how they do it in Pennsylvania, but in Ohio, you're required to work 4,000 hours under a private investigator before you're allowed to go take the state test.
You know, I was licensed in Ohio. I did take that state test in Columbus, and that was in 1990 something. I don't know. But yes, the Ohio. Each state has different laws if you want to become a PI, right?
Right.
So, did you like that test?
You know what? I'll tell you the truth. I had studied as hard for that as any test I had in college, and I had no problem with it. And it was really funny because the day I took it with eight men, and we all got outside, and they were carping and whining about it. Well, what happened is a lot of them were former police officers, and they thought that they were going to go in there and know the answers. And when they started asking questions like, how much does it cost to renew your license? They had no idea. I think a lot of them did not pass the first time. You're allowed to take it 3 times, and if you don't pass it, you're done.
You know what? I know for a fact in the test. I think it was like when I took mine. I think there were me and 5 other people. I think there was a woman and 4 guys, if I remember right. And yeah, I think one of the guys did not make, 1 or 2 didn't make it. I know the female made it, and I also, well, of course, I made it. I have to say, very, very particular about the laws. Okay, very specific. You better know the law in Ohio, and you better not violate it.
It was a tough test.
Yeah, and I took the one in New York State as well, which, you know, I took that one twice, not because I failed it the first time, because I had decided not to renew my license in Ohio. So I let it lapse beyond the grace period. And then I got a request to go to New York City. And I had to retake. They said, no, you got to retake that test. So I retook the test in Albany and passed it the second time. And then I kept my license until I decided that New York was not a friendly place to work. So I shut that down. Yeah. So, but Ohio was always, it was a tough test, but a good place to do PI work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I got to ask out of the gate before we get into the meaty stuff. Any good PI stories you want to share that you can share?
One of my favorite ones, because I proved that I was right when everybody insisted I was wrong. And it had to do the first 2 years when I was working for another investigator, because his client, he only had one good client, and it was a big insurance company, and they represented doctors and hospitals who were being charged with malpractice. And our job was to defend them. And what was one of the interesting things I found out during the 2 years I worked for him is that 80% of the lawsuits that were filed were fraudulent. But the one that stays with me had to do with the death of an 11-week-old baby. And it was in St. Mary's, Ohio. It was way over near the Indiana border. And this woman, the baby was biracial. The woman was white. The father was black, but they were not together. She was living with a boyfriend who was white. And what I did is I went there. I spent a couple of days over there. And the first day I went through all the courts and collected this pile of lawsuits against these people. Everything you could think of they had done. DUIs, evictions, bankruptcy. Just these, I could tell these were not good people to start with. And then well, the first thing I did, though, before I even started doing that, is I went and interviewed the doctor that was being sued. And I knew immediately when I interviewed him that he had done nothing wrong, because he was irate that she had filed this lawsuit against him. He said she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know how to take care of this baby. And he said she put that baby in a swing. The baby had had surgery on his stomach because it was having trouble digesting its food. So this poor baby, his 11 weeks old, has already had surgery, was recovering it well from it. The doctor tells me that she put this baby in a baby swing at 8:00 at night and then never checked him till 9:00 the next morning. And I was appalled. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that poor baby. Oh, he could be kind of folded up on where that surgery was. Man. Well, anyhow, when she finally wakes up and goes out to find him, he's cold.
Oh, man.
He has died. And she hysterically calls 911. They come, and I find out that when they arrive, she's standing on the curb trying to give this dead baby mouth to mouth. Okay, so I right away I'm very suspicious, because this was not a SIDS death as the coroner said it was. I knew it wasn't. Right. I have 7 children of my own. I raised a lot of babies. I know the way this all works. And I knew that this 11-week-old baby, this was not a SIDS death. Anyhow, what I did is I went to Indiana and interviewed her sister. And when the sister opened the door, I told her my name, and I told her why I was there, that I was investigating the death of her nephew. And she said, the first thing she said to me is, I was wondering when somebody was going to come. And I thought, I knew I was right. Well, we sat at her picnic table and talked for 3 hours. And I finally said, do you think the boyfriend killed the baby? She said, absolutely, she did. Man. She said he hated that baby. She said to bury that baby, they put him in a styrofoam cooler, and she said then they powdered him all up so he would look white. And I was just appalled.
What the hell? Okay. All right.
Yeah, just appalled. Yep. Anyhow, I was convinced that they were the only two people in the house. I was convinced that he had killed this baby. So I contacted what I did is I went to the fire department and the police department, which were in the same building. And I ran into the EMT guy who arrived on the scene. And I said to him, could you please tell me what her attitude was or how her behavior was when you arrived? And he goes, give me a subpoena and I'll tell you. And I wanted to punch him right in the mouth, I swear. So I go next door to the sheriff and I said, listen, I'm not trying to find out anything secret. I said, all I asked the guy was, what was her response? And he said, ask me anything you want to know. And he said, there you go. Yeah, I love that guy. He was just great. Anyhow, I was convinced, not only besides the behavior of the parents, I knew the mother had not killed this child, but the boyfriend had such a bad history in the courts. I knew that this guy had done something, especially after the interview with the sister. So I called the prosecutor there and I said, I think that baby was killed. And I got a very snotty prosecutor who said, well, the coroner said it's SIDS and that's it. So that's just it. Well, okay. So 6 months goes by and I'm up in Detroit for a week working on a case. And I get a phone call from one of my daughters. And she says, a police officer called you from St. Mary's. I want you to call him immediately. And this is like at 7:00 in the morning. So I call right away and he said, you needed to be the first one to know that the boyfriend was in jail for welfare fraud and admitted to his roommate that he had suffocated the baby. And then all of a sudden the prosecutor was very interested in me and called and said, would you please, the coroner has changed it from SIDS to homicide. And would you please send us all your notes and information you collected? Well, I told my boss that. And he said, well, I have to check with the lawyer first. And I thought, well, you check away and I'm not waiting on you.
There you go.
I immediately faxed everything over to them. And the guy was found guilty, of course.
That's amazing.
But the ending of this is really interesting because 2 weeks later, my boss, who was a former FBI agent, said to me, well, I haven't heard from the lawyer yet about that case. And I said, it's a moot point. I sent everything over to them. They've already had the trial. And he was mad that I went over his head. And
wouldn't be mad, but yes, I understand that. Yeah,
he got rid of me within 2 months.
See, to me that's a problem from the prosecutor to the hired gun. Okay, because And that also speaks to where we're at today. It's how we should hunt monsters versus how we hunt them now. But even then, the fact that the compromised, not compromised, the prosecutors then and now, they're only interested in convictions, right?
Yeah, and they don't care if they have the right person or not.
That's right.
As long as they get a conviction.
Right. And now I understand. Okay, so when one would, when an investigator or detective, a commissioned detective will say, investigates, for example, a homicide, one of the first things that they must think of, that we must think of if we're doing a similar case, is how this would play out to a jury. Okay, in the back of your mind, back of my mind, that's always there. So, you have to do things a certain way. Cross your T's, dot your I's, and be very thorough, but also be correct.
Yep.
And that's the intuition. It's intuition built on experience, don't you think, or no?
Absolutely.
And see, today, interviews done by Zoom, right? You're not getting a two-dimensional. No.
You got to knock on the front door and surprise them and see what their response is to you. You got to look them in the eye and see if they look back or if they look away when they're talking to you.
Boy, any father or mother of any teenager knows that.
Oh, yeah.
It's yeah. Yes, you can read people. People lie. Yeah, they lie out their mouths, but they also lie with their bodies.
Absolutely.
So it's so important that that investigators are there, and that's the thing. I'm really I don't know. I've just been really thinking about in today's environment the lack of the desire to expend some shoe leather or to use intuition or to have that dogged persistence to go out there and really do what needs to be done and kick some ass. And pardon my language, but yeah, we've got to. So, and then, okay, so you got the goods on that guy, but you were fighting a headwind with the prosecutor, with the police, with and even the EMT.
And then I got fired.
And then you got fired. Yeah.
Fortunately, several months before I got fired, and without telling him, because I just had a bad feeling about him, I had gone and taken a test and already had my license. So when he fired me, I had one client and I was off to the races.
Amen. See, and that shows character and integrity. Boy, I'll tell you what, Susan Daniels, I'm talking to Susan Daniels, for those who don't know, her Substack is on the screen, and she's got her investigative work there. It's worthy of a subscription, folks. Subscribe.
And it's free.
It's free.
Yeah, mine are all free. I never ask for people for money.
Susan, I've got a few reports, a few articles, a few op-eds that I am preparing to put on Substack. One in particular is just one in particular I'm working on that I wanted to get out by tomorrow, because tomorrow it does mark the 44th anniversary of a murder, one of the most brutal murders I've ever seen. That was of my uncle. He was murdered. He moved in with my father. He was murdered in my family home and in the very bedroom I grew up in. I don't think I've ever told you this story, but 44 years ago tomorrow, his body was found, and how I was working as a first responder, and I was married, and I was living about 3-4 miles away. My mom had died in 1978. As a matter of fact, the very bedroom that the murder took place. After I moved out, my parents took my bedroom. I don't know. They moved some things around, took my bedroom, and that's where my mom was. She died in her sleep, and I went on a Saturday morning in 1978 to return a vacuum cleaner, and I found her passed away. But then in 1982, I was working as a first responder. I was working as a first responder in 78, but also in 82, and I got a phone call from my dad in the morning, and he was I could barely understand him. So I rushed to the house. Now the police were already on their way, but I kind of beat the police. I don't know how that happened. And let me tell you something. My uncle was stabbed like 36 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
who hated him that much?
Oh, that's a long story. But the point I was making, I wanted to get this article up because that, by the way, that case went unsolved for 5 years. It was a cold case. And some people in the chat obviously know this story, but it went unsolved for 5 years. And I had, now after, go figure, right after that happened, I said, you know what, I'm tired of being a first responder. I'm just tired. I was an EMT instructor. I trained instructors. I trained EMTs. I was involved I was on the board of the CPR of American Heart, and I was doing all sorts of stuff. Anyway, I thought, you know what, I could make more money elsewhere. And then I got into fraud. I was hired as a fraud investigator, and I tried out. I actually took the police exam, I went through municipal police training in Pennsylvania, where you didn't need to be associated with you had to pay for yourself if you weren't associated with the police department. Anyway, I took that, working as a fraud investigator, and then I opened up the agent. I met with a partner with an agency and a PI in 87. Why am I telling you? You're my guest. I'm not yours. I don't know. But anyway.
I never heard this story before.
Oh, yeah. So in February of 1987, we took on the murder case because it was a cold case of my uncle. And you got to understand, folks, there were the blood evidence. The room looked like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Oh, wow.
Cast in hues of red and blood. You know, the body holds, 10 pints, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't too much left.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was one of the most hideous things I've ever seen. And the smell, violent death has a smell, and the metallic smell of death. But I won't get into that. But the bottom line is, it took 6 months. It took a lot of effort. We traveled to we traveled to Florida. We traveled to different states. We talked to people that, there were so many people to talk to. But you know what? We never gave up. And in August, we turned over a name. We said, this is who you need to, this is the guy. But match him to the bloody fingerprints and palm prints in the shower. I mean, to understand how sick this was. And 3 days later, they popped him. And the interesting part, though, he was in jail, which part of that we got some information from a prison, because he was serving right after about 3 weeks after the murder. He was incarcerated in prison for carjacking and other things, and then right after, or right around the time that we turned his name over, he finished his sentence, and he was out on probation, and he was arrested about a mile from my office.
Oh, wow.
And he was pissed because he did not like us.
Oh,
anyway,
really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No Christmas card, huh?
No, not then, not now. And good. But see, I'm sorry for bogarting your time or taking up your time.
Oh, don't be silly.
That to me, okay, so that kind of started, that was like the start of my interest in all of the forensic stuff. And then, but nothing replaces the actual dogged persistence that's needed for the investigations that you do and I've done. And so anyway, that's why I guess I told that, because back then, no cell phones, no email, no APHIS, no CODIS, none of that stuff.
Oh no, we had dimes for the payphones and pagers, and that's all we had.
Pagers, if you were lucky. Well, I kept throwing mine in the drawer. I didn't want mine. So,
well, the guy I was working for, I had to carry it for him.
Man, well, it's interesting that you that story on the baby that was murdered by that father.
Yeah.
The case that spawned that investigation, the lawsuits, the fraudulent lawsuits, was that like a RICO thing, or was that coordinated by an attorney, or was that just kind of a one-off?
It was the law firm we worked for did nothing but defend doctors and lawyers, and this was just another one of their cases.
Okay, all right. So
I got for a while I worked with somebody else, and she was very young and a pain in the neck. So I liked it when I went off on my own, and which I did with this case.
And speaking about going out on your own or going off on your own, folks, about what is it now? 18 months or something like that, 16 months ago, I saw Susan Daniels just go into the mouth of a lion. I'm not going to give any details, but I'll tell you what, fearless, and a place where I could not go. We couldn't go. And she went in, and I'll tell you something. People did not like her.
Nope.
but you know what? The job got done. And even to the point of, the job got done. And I don't know if you're still paying for it, but not paying for it, but I don't know if you're still getting harassed. I hope not.
No, I've never gotten harassed by anybody in 33 years. The worst thing that ever happened is somebody make a snarky remark on my Substack, and I would just block them so they couldn't do it a second time.
I'm glad, that.
Well, you know what? If you think about it, all the things I've written about Obama with documents, I hate when they say with receipts. No, it's a document. It's not a receipt. He didn't pay. Nobody paid for something that they're.
Thank you.
Back. I hate that word.
I do too.
Anyhow, it dawned on me years ago. I couldn't understand why nobody was coming after me, because as we know, I have been at this since 2009 after him and writing about him for now 17 years consistently. And I thought, I know why they haven't, I never even got a cease and desist letter, because they don't want any kind of lawsuit. They don't want to sue me. They don't want to open themselves up for discovery.
There is something to that, isn't there?
Oh, yes. Yes. He would have to prove why he's got this phony Social Security number.
So, all right, folks, think back to Obama when he kind of came on the national scene. Think back to that time, and remember the bogus, as Susan Daniels says, the bogus Social Security number. Where did that come from? It came from the investigative work of Susan Daniels. Now, you might have read about it in other places, but who did the footwork? Who found that information? It was Susan Daniels. First of all, how did you get involved in that, Susan? I mean, what made you?
You know what? Somebody, a client of mine said, he was already in office, and he said, I'd really like to try and find out about something about him, because there's something off about him, which I agreed. And I said, all right. So I started running stuff on databases, and now would have gotten in trouble over it. But I ran Barack Obama, Illinois, and up pops the Social Security number. And I had already dealt with so many of them, I instantly recognized it as a phony because it started with 042. And I knew that was East Coast. He was in Hawaii, and it should have been a 575 or 576. What people don't understand is it wasn't where you were born, it was where you were living when you applied for your social security number. And each state had its own first three numbers assigned to it. And that carried on until June 2011 when Barack Obama's administration changed it to randomization. And I think it had to do with muddying the water over his being a phony.
Interesting. So about Social Security numbers, there used to be a pattern to them, obviously.
Right.
The first three were the
first three numbers.
Yeah. And then, okay. The randomness was the last four. The middle two had a specific designation, but now it's not like that. So okay, so back then you said, wait a second, this is not right.
I knew instantly as soon as it popped up on the screen. I thought he's got a phony number.
And
so I said, now let's now this is step one, and then I started running the number, and it said that it had. I finally pinned down exactly the date that it was issued to him, allegedly, and it was March 28th, 1977. Now, he was a 15-year-old living in Hawaii, but it was a Connecticut Social Security number. All right. Well, as I looked into it further, it turns out the number had originally been issued to a woman who had been born in 1890, and it was issued to her. Now, people get all worked up about that because Social Security did not start until 1936. What happened is women like her age would have been, they would not have been working outside the home. They would have not required a Social Security number. So they would have used their husband's number. And I found in a file a woman who had been born in 1896, a letter from her to the government saying, I used my husband's number, but he has now died, and I need a number of my own. So people would have women, I think Obama's using a dead woman's number, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Because what women would need to do is, like this woman would have been 87 years old in 1977. She probably needed Medicaid. She probably needed some kind of Social Security. She would have needed some kind of government benefit and could not have gotten it without a Social Security number.
Well, okay. So you did not have a client, so to speak. You were doing this on your own. You knew something was wrong, right?
Well, somebody paid me $1 to do it.
Okay. And yeah, that's kind of we have to have like a token payment, just to be in compliance with the law.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and a written request.
Yep. So okay, I get that. And okay, so I mean, you do not have a corporation or a political interest saying, "Hey, go after that," or look at this guy.
No, not at all. It was an individual.
All right. So I thought, okay. Wow. So did anyone care back then? I mean, what happened after you found that out?
You know what? I didn't know what to do with it because I thought, here, I found it in April of 2009, and I started thinking about it because, as I told you, I had been certified as a paralegal in 1977. Yeah, 77. I got my paralegal certificate at the same time I was working on my undergraduate degree because one was down the street from the other, and I'd walk down and go to both schools. Anyhow, I knew that if I could find somebody with a lawsuit, that they could a lawsuit against him, that they could use it. So I went online and started looking for one, and I found I found Orly Tate's in California, which may not have been the best move, but it was an interesting move because I called her and she was suing him over something. I owe her probably the birth certificate. But I called her and I said, you know what? I see you have a lawsuit. I have his social security number. And she was real snippy. She said, well, I've got his number. And I said, oh, okay, well, then you don't need me. She said, well, I have the first 5 numbers. And I said, I have the whole thing. Well, she talk about a quick change. Oh, she wanted to be my best friend. So I gave her the number. And then she did something really unethical. To verify that I was right, she was not too long after that, was at a seminar. And she sat down next to a private investigator from Colorado. And she said, hey, would you mind running this social security number for me? And he said, no, not at all. Now, she doesn't tell him whose it is. So he runs it and up pops Barack Obama. Well, he got in big trouble with the database and they even quit him.
Of course.
But she should never have done that.
So was that a setup or was that an honest?
It was she's a lawyer. You know, okay, what else do I need to say?
Okay.
But what else I did is somebody said to me, and this was probably in the fall of 2009, somebody said to me, well, why don't you send it to WorldNet Daily? And I said, I don't even know what WorldNet Daily is. And they said, just look it up and send a blanket email to them. And I did. I wrote to them and I said, hey, if anybody's interested, I have Barack Obama's social security number and he's using a stolen number. Well, within 20 minutes, Jerry Corsi calls me. And he immediately jumped on it. And he subsequently, over the next couple of years, wrote a ton of stuff about it. And then that was followed up by a phone call from Jack Cashill saying, everybody keeps talking about this phony social security number and all roads lead to you. he said, are you actually the person that found it? And I said, yes, I am.
I'm going to tell I remember those days. And folks, the reason this is important goes to the most recent article that Susan Daniels posted, which was yesterday, I think. It was
two days ago.
A couple of days ago. Okay. Which is the CIA gives birth to Barack Obama. So understand, because somehow we got involved, not as an investigative body, well, sort of, kind of, using our investigative assets and resources to dig kind of in parallel, in tandem with you. But we did not have I'll just say this, we did not have a client. Okay. It was just for our own, we needed to know because we could, based on your investigation, Jack's writing, Jerry Corsi's information at the time, we knew something was way off.
Yep.
And okay. So, and folks on the screen, is the CIA gives birth to Barack Obama. It's a good read, and it's an important read. So okay, saying in that time frame, you also had a few years later, you had the situation with the certificate of live birth from Hawaii. You had Loretta Fuddy. People don't remember that plane crash, or in quotation marks, Loretta Fuddy, the person that took care of the records. Dying. Dying.
Yeah. At the Board of Health, she's the one that inserted the phony birth certificate in 2008 into the book there.
Right.
And people never understood, well, how does somebody insert somebody into a book? And I said, obviously, you've never gone to a courthouse, because the books, you slide a slide and the cover lifts off and you can take the pages out. They're 3-hole punched. And you can insert anything you want in those books.
That, again, the little details are very important. Things like that where you can, well, it doesn't take much to alter records like that, and it takes a good moral person to oversee, or good moral people to oversee, if the records are like that, to oversee records. So, wow, okay, so what? Okay, continue with your story. I didn't mean to like go off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. Well, I got involved briefly with Sheriff Arpaio's cold case posse.
Okay.
They got in touch with me when they were putting stuff together, and I gave them all my information. In fact, 3 of them at that time, I think it was only about 2011, 2012. 3 of them went to see Donald Trump. This was long before he ever ran for office.
And that always intrigued me, that period of time when they went there. I did not, I figured he had some pull, some influence, but I did not think about him at that time as running for president. Continue, sir. Or ma'am. I'm sorry, continue.
And, but anyhow, then they go back and they have their first press conference. And, I knew he had a guy named Mike Zullo who was his investigator. Well, later on, several years later, I said, just for the heck of it, let me see what Zullo's all about. And I saw that Zullo had worked for the Bergen County Sheriff's Department for 5 years, but the 20 previous years before Arpaio hired him, he was selling cars.
Right.
He had no idea what he was doing as an investigator. I saw that immediately, and I didn't want my work muddied by them. And I pulled out of all of it. And the thing that I always thought was so unfair, there was a woman who was at the first press conference, and her name is Mara Zabest. She's in California. She is the one who actually took the birth certificate apart, piece by piece by piece, and explained it all along the way. And she, like me, saw that these people did not know what they were doing. Zullo, he telegraphed everything he was going to do, which screwed it up. And she bailed out like I did. And then they kept taking credit for her work. And still, to this day, get credit for her work. And that always bothered me. I hated that. And I hated when people tried to say they found the Social Security number. It's just, don't do that. It's just not right.
Don't do that.
How's that for subtle? Don't do that.
Well, I love that, because when I think back to that time, and I spoke with Zullo, I spoke with Sheriff Arpaio numerous times, and I could sense there was some inside information here. There was something not right between the two. Okay, so in fact, we had Mike Zullo and Jerome Corsi, and I think Sheriff Arpaio was on the show. I met Sheriff Arpaio in Washington alone a few years ago. Well, more than a few years ago now. But we spoke about this, and I spoke to Jerome Corsi about this as well. But specifically to your point there was, I felt like there was like this internal sabotage. I don't know if it was incompetence or deliberate sabotage. The raising of money for the investigation, I personally think, was fundraising for his run for office again, Arpaio. Okay. And he raised somebody out there. I became friends with somebody that worked at the sheriff's department, and he had managed to raise $8 million. $8 million?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So I believe, not that this makes any difference, but I believe when I met him, when I spoke with him now in DC, that I believe that predates his run for office. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, he was in office for like 20 years.
Yeah.
He was
Well, I mean,
probably
predates.
in office when you met him.
Yes, but the re-election. When did he not?
Every 4 years he had to run again.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it was my understanding from my memory, and you know what? It's really not that important. But I thought that he was in a campaign mode for an election, re-election, or getting elected again. But anyway, so okay, so here we have. I guess the bottom line here, again. Now, your intuition can't obviously spark the investor assisted in the investigation, or your read of the tea leaves, your physical presence in your eyes, and you didn't rely necessarily on technology, but it was at some point an investigation that involved the technological aspects of things, as when they got to the certificate of live birth. But then your focus, especially with the Social Security number, was on talking to people, was on the investigative work and sussing that out. And so where are we at today with?
Well, I'm still complaining about this. Is a really interesting turn of events. I am still complaining about the lawsuit I filed in 2012 against the Ohio Secretary of State, trying to keep Barack Obama off our ballot. And the Secretary of State and no one from his office in Columbus ever came up to the hearing. 3 days later, the judge dismissed my case, and in it said, I can't remember this word for word, but that the plaintiff was under the misconception that there was anything wrong with the use of an incorrect Social Security number. That's how they phrased it. Okay. Now, this is what's interesting. The Secretary of State then was John Husted. John Husted was appointed to take Vance's seat as senator. Now,
okay.
Now, and he is now running again for he finished Vance's term and is now up for re-election against the worst Democrat that has ever lived, named Sherrod Brown. And I am going to be forced to vote for John Husted, a man who I despise, who is a man with no integrity whatsoever.
So, former Secretary of State, taken Vance's Senate position.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Now up for re-election against a communist. Okay. Nice. And people wonder how we got where we're at.
Oh, I don't.
Well, yeah, you don't.
No.
So the lawsuit that you filed.
Yeah.
What happened? Because I do remember. Man, I'll tell you what. I remember the lawsuit.
Cost. It was a really good lawsuit. The complaint was 18 pages, and I had 83 pages of documents supporting my allegations in the complaint. And a former teacher of mine at Cleveland State, who was also an attorney, helped me put together the complaint. He let me know everything that I needed to include in it. What I did is, remember, there had been like 400 lawsuits filed against Obama about his birth certificate. All of them defended by, I can't think of the name of the lawsuit right now.
Yeah.
You know who I mean.
I do. Yes.
I'll think of their name. Anyhow, they defended him, made millions of dollars defending him, and threw every lawsuit out on standing. They said the people that filed it had no right to had no standing. Well, I had to figure out a way to overcome that, and did it by getting certified by John Huston as a write-in presidential candidate.
Okay. Yep.
It put me on level ground with Obama. And in fact, I'm told that I had got like 15 votes across the country.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I even got somebody in Richland County, Ohio, who wrote my name in. So I got one vote in Ohio.
But it's almost sad that we have. Well, I guess it's kind of sad when you think about the fact that you have to go to the trouble to become a candidate for the office.
Yeah, not to get the lawsuit thrown out. And I like to think that that caused them some indigestion because that was always their easy out.
But okay, so what happened though to the lawsuit? Because
it's lingering in Jaga County Courthouse.
how is that even possible?
I mean, no, it was dismissed. I'm convinced that the dismissal was written before the hearing, because what judge has ever ruled in 3 days on anything?
That's very true. Was that in state court or was that in federal court?
That was in county court. Yeah, in Jaga County.
Okay.
And the dismissal was 4 pages long. So not a lot of effort into it.
Is there any indication that Team Obama had any? Did they acknowledge that lawsuit? I mean, beyond the illegal.
Nobody. Of course they didn't. I mean, I keep telling people. I mean, I still write about it.
Okay.
I don't want people to forget. I don't want them to forget anything about him that I've found out.
So when you and I spoke last week, you were saying, think about, because this stuck with me as well. Think about where we're at today, and think that if we had some serious people in this country, we could certainly challenge everything. I mean, yes, the 2020 election. Yes, the impeachment stuff, which, of course, we're getting promised. It's any day now. Any day now.
Yeah, right. Don't hold your breath.
Exactly. But if we would have taken care of business back then, we would not have 20%.
We would not be in the mess we're in.
No.
The thing that people don't understand about the importance of, like, my lawsuit and the things I write about Obama and his phony Social Security number. For 8 years, he was in the White House. Everything he did was illegal. He was using a stolen Social Security number. Every law that he signed, every dollar he spent, every appointment he made, some of those laws are still in effect. They're illegal.
So the bottom line here, or the crux, the core issue, is who in the hell is Obama? Who sent him?
You know what? Brzezinski was at Occidental in 1981. He was at that time he was teaching at Columbia. Does that ring any bells?
Gee.
He was there recruiting foreign and Obama was perfect, biracial students, and to work for the CIA. He wasn't working for the CIA then, as I just remembered, but he was working at Columbia and in some advisory council to the government, and he was in there and recruited Obama there.
So you're talking about Mika's father, Zygmunt Brzezinski. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Which, folks, man, think about that lineage. But okay, so we know. I mean, Jack Cashel's written a book about Obama. I mean, who hasn't written a book about all of this? We expose it, you expose it, but nothing ever gets done. But there's a reason, I think, why it doesn't get done. And I think your latest article kind of speaks to that. And folks, looking at that article, and the latest again from Susan Substack is CIA gives birth to Barack Obama. I like, first of all, the opening paragraph kind of sets people right. Because if you follow this case, if you're familiar with this case, you know the stories, you know the lies, you know all of the stuff that people try to say is wrong, or you got your facts wrong, or whatever. But Susan writes, to those who keep trying to convince me of a story I already debunked, because they do this. They'll throw stuff out.
That's right.
You know, and
red herrings for red herrings around.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember, Barack Obama, we were told, Barack Obama's, or I'll just complete your paragraph here. No, Barack Obama's stolen Connecticut Social Security number did not originally belong to Jean Paul Ludwig. You remember that story? And remember how, yeah, boy, red herrings indeed. So why the fuss and muss? Was it just to distract us? Was it to divert our attention, or to make us look like fools, or what? Some people look like fools, or what?
Oh, it tried to make me look like I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay. That was
always did.
Yeah. That was directed pretty much, when you peel the layers back, that whole thing was directed, I think, at your efforts.
Oh yeah. Doug, at least once a month, somebody sends me that article on how it belonged to John Paul Ludwig, and how he how Madeline Payne, who was Ann Dunham's mother and Barack Obama's grandmother, allegedly worked at probate court. No, it was amazing. With a high school education, she was named a vice president at the Bank of Hawaii and handled money going to the CIA and over in Indonesia, where her daughter worked.
Good gig on a high school diploma, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Great.
So,
and his mother lived in Indonesia in a 5-star hotel for 5 years.
That kind of threw me a little bit when you think about, besides the blatant aspect of that, the fact that the legend of Obama from Dunham, Ann Dunham, I mean, it's, I don't know. I look at this and I think this is a perfect cutout, CIA legend cutout. And we had plenty of warning that this was coming, and here it was. So, okay. So you go on in this article. Why was the CIA so involved in Obama's life? Because they created him. He worked for them, shoveling money to the CIA. And when he was president, like the $1 billion for Operation Timber Sycamore. Whew. And where's that? Or what was that? U.S. Special Forces trained Islamic fundamentalists who carried out a reign of terror.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Do you believe Obama was a Muslim, or is a Muslim?
No, I don't necessarily believe he's a Muslim, but he's a Muslim traveler, that's for sure. He's too lazy to get down and pray 5 times a day.
Yeah, the muftis won't have them. Okay, no. Yeah. What about? I got to ask you this as we kind of get into this. Do you believe that Obama might be malleable because of his beyond the obvious CIA connections? Do you think he might be, I don't know, easily manipulated because of his activities, social preferences, sexual preferences, that kind of stuff?
No, because everybody knew. Everybody knew. I mean, he and Rahm Emanuel both belonged to a club called Men's Country in Chicago, which was a gay men's club. And, everybody knew.
Man.
I mean, think of Donald Young. Does the name Donald Young ring any bells? Donald Young,
Yes, the church.
the choir master for
Was
the
that
Christ Church.
wasn't that Lieutenant Quarles Young?
No, he was the guy in Washington that they had in front of a church with all the phony passport documents.
Right. Too many criminals to keep track of. Go ahead. So Donald Young. Go ahead.
Donald Young, it was Barack. Now, Barack Obama got married in 1993 to Michelle Obama. Okay. But on December 23rd, 2007, Donald Young, who was Barack Obama's boyfriend and the choir master at Reverend Rice Church, was executed with a bullet in the back of his head in his apartment. And in a 6-week period, somebody else from the Reverend's Church, another gay man, was also executed, and a third one died of AIDS. Now, all of these were killed or died right before Obama started his 2008 campaign. And Donald Young, 3,000 people showed up for his funeral, and Barack Obama was obvious by his absence.
What was why? Why are we looking at this? The 3 deaths and more to follow. I might add.
Oh yeah, how about the chef, the sous chef, who was supposed to have died 100 feet from shore, and the water was only 3 feet deep.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I've gotten emails about that right after it happened. But go ahead.
Somebody said, I've heard different stories, and one was that he was saying that he was going to write a book.
Okay.
The other possibilities are, I think that Malia Obama was with him. I think she was the woman that was there, that the mysterious woman that they wrote about that ran to get the Secret Service to try and help. I don't know. I think that he could have been involved with Barack Obama. He could have been involved with his daughter. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Do I think he drowned in 100 feet of water? No.
No.
Not at all. And then the Secret Service couldn't get either one of their boats to work. Neither one of their boats would start. And they found him 100 feet from shore, and somebody had sent me an estuary map of the pond there. And 100 feet from shore, it was 3 feet deep. You had to go out 400 feet for it to be 8 feet deep. And they said they found him in 8 feet deep water at 100 feet from shore.
Okay.
That's in my Substack pile of stuff.
Folks, if you haven't done so already, on the screen, is that? Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'm looking at this. Sorry, the screen is off of my previous monitor is not centered. So I'm looking at your Substack. I'm thinking, wait a second, is that yours? Of course it is. Your book's there. It's just repositioned on my screen. Okay. The articles that you have in here are pretty. I mean, a lot of them. These are not op-ed articles. They're pretty hard hitting. No. And you bring receipts. And I'm kidding. And that's another thing too. The change in language, the replacement of words to some words to make it mean something else.
Yes.
Stop it.
I'm with you 100%.
Man,
it's documents. It's supporting documents is what it is.
There you go. And because that trivializes, in my view, and it intentionally trivializes the importance of the documents.
It sounds like you went to Costco and picked up a couple of things and got a receipt.
Exactly. And before we move from this particular article, what caught my attention as well, I mean, the whole thing did, but the I don't want to say rehashing, but the highlights that you point out in this particular report. Again, the title of the report on Susan's Substack, and please subscribe to our Substack, because CIA gives birth to Barack Obama. The fact that we had supposed, well, I'll go here first and then kind of back up, but the fact that we had people like Ted Cruz and Gowdy and Marco Rubio,
all of them,
they knew about this. They were given the information. I
contacted them. Yeah. I sent them copies of the lawsuit. To about 14 or 15 people I contacted and never heard it was all the big Republicans, and never heard a single word. And I'll tell you why, because they already knew.
They did. The only thing I really took away from Sheriff Arpaio, he said something to me one day, and he said that this will never, no matter how hard we work, we don't have the right people in the right places to do anything about this. He said it more eloquently than that, but you get the idea. So we've been captured, I suspect. Man, okay. And Rubio now is Secretary of State.
Yep.
Trey Gowdy is still doing show trials. And Cruz, whatever.
Cruz is out running his mouth every day about what he's going to do.
And kind of going backwards a little bit, you did kind of point, or forward, backward, whatever. You point out that you use the phrase Manchurian candidate. And you know what, Susan? That to me is the perfect description for Obama. The perfect example of a Manchurian candidate is Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
To what extent now is the CIA still under Trump, still as
worthless as it was before?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, is it?
Yes, it is. I believe it is.
I was hoping you'd say no.
No, I think it is.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so.
And the Secret Service, look what a mess they made the other night.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that.
Pennsylvania all over again.
See, yeah, folks, and if anyone knows about Butler, Pennsylvania, let me just say Susan Daniels knows. Okay. And she's got the scars to prove it. The road rash. I'll leave it there. Yeah. Because I want to say this as well, because people on social media, I swear, Susan, I think some people are paid to post misinformation, to really say that to say bizarre stuff. I was accused of making things up, and oh my gosh.
Hey, they're going to lose their jobs because they'll have AI writing all this negative information now.
Yes. And by the way, I thought of you yesterday. I was contacted by somebody. I did not take the call. I don't talk to the press anymore. I was contacted by someone at the New York Post, wanted to talk to me. And in the wake of what happened on Saturday, let's talk about what happened on Saturday. What the hell?
You watch that video, and you got all these guys. They looked like there was 8 or 10 or 12 of them standing there chatting away, and here comes this guy running, and nobody is even looking down that area. And then he runs by them, and nobody chases him. A guy gets down on his knees and pointing his gun. And I was appalled. I was just, it was a mess. They did a terrible job. And I realized that some of them were police and not all Secret Service, but that didn't excuse any of them.
Not in the least, though the officer or agent that he ran by, I have to give him a few props. He did drop pretty quick.
He should have chased him. He didn't. He dropped to his knee.
Yeah, and man, I don't know what I would do in that. But yeah, he did. He kind of it scared the crap out of him. You could tell, like it startled him. It wasn't looking. It was almost like
It
he was.
should have been.
Yeah, he was like in the daze, and then yeah. So, but the whole fact that he was, I have to say as well, that hotel I stayed there a number of years ago for a couple of days. That's where Reagan, of course, took
Right.
that bullet. And you want to get a room, especially during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You know how long you've got? Do you know you got to make those reservations like a year in advance?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This
So
guy did not come and make it. That
Yeah.
walk up and ask for a room.
I don't know.
He had to have that room way ahead.
And then his manifesto. I don't know. It was quoted. I did not see it, but it was quoted. I don't recall the news source, but my goodness, typical.
How about Obama? After they've disclosed what was in the manifesto, Obama comes out the next day and says, "Well, we don't know why he did this." I mean, I can't tell you. I despise Barack Obama and everything he stands for. He is a mealy mouthed, skinny creep without an ounce of integrity.
You know, the fact that he is still operational today, I think should tell us everything that we need to know about what's going on. And I don't know how to fight this. You're used to fighting in the trenches, getting your hands dirty, going out and digging up information that other people can't or won't, and taking it
You're afraid to.
And I'll tell you what, there's not an ounce of fear in this woman, folks. Her name is Susan Daniels. Her book, her story, is written out in a book that she's written. It's on your screen, but you go to Amazon. Do us a solid. Do me a solid, folks. Pick up a copy of that book because it is a good read. It's a very. I'll tell you what. It comes from the heart. Yeah, it's a true story. Man.
All true. Painfully so.
You know, there's a lot in that book. In fact, I had it out this weekend, and like I said, I was going to reread it because I read it. It's been a year and a half or so 2 years since I read it, and I could tell in a couple of areas just the intensity of your words. I thought, wow, you've been through it, and others today not so much. You have skin in the game. You have a reason for doing what you're doing, and you know what? You love the country. And as a private investigator, I think PIs get a bad rap sometimes, whether it's a TV show, stupid TV shows, or just in general. They get a bad rap because we do things that others can't or won't.
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, the old timers like us don't get the bad rap. It's these pretend ones now that have come along and don't know what they're doing, and they deserve a bad rap.
I agree. I do agree. I think back. Well, I don't. I guess I don't. We don't have to churn up old times, but it's again. It goes back to: Are there people today who have that same work ethic, the same ability, the same willingness to go in the trenches, to talk to people face to face, or are they just hiding behind a computer screen?
Well, we have that Nick Shirley who is out there doing fantastic work. He showed the Somalis and then he went to California and he's done stuff. And what was the other guy's name that started? He started with the remember he took they wanted to borrow money from the country to start a whorehouse or something.
James O'Keefe.
Yes, O'Keefe. O'Keefe and Nick Shirley, I think, have done a commendable job.
Now the difference there, I was thinking about Nick Shirley and about his revelations, and I'm not going to take. Look, I think that's fantastic, but what I would have liked to have seen maybe a week's worth of undercover video without the confrontation first.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. You have to set the stage. You have to prove. You have to have the supporting evidence before you make the allegations.
Right, because we saw what happened with Nick Shirley.
I mean, what would it have taken for him to sit outside of one of these alleged hospices or daycare centers for a week and show nobody coming and nobody going, and then put that, edit that into the dates and times that ran maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then go in there and ask them.
Mm-hmm.
You already got the proof that nothing's happened. He like jumped the gun on all of it.
Well, and yes, and I think, I mean, it did the job, but the job was left to the so-called authorities in the various states, or in that cesspool in Wisconsin, for example, and it got nowhere. So I can kind of see where, okay, would the predicate investigative documents, or would the investigative documents along with the I guess my question is, would that have made a difference? I don't know, but I would have felt better with that.
Yep.
Because he could have taken that and actually filed. I believe Wisconsin has the same infrastructure. You could file a private criminal complaint and push that. If the DA or the state's prosecutor, if they don't file, you can file, but you have to get it past the DA. Which, how's that going to work in Hennepin County? I don't think so. Mary Moriarty, no, she's not going to sign off on that. But you do have room for appeals or to take it elsewhere. So, but anyway, yeah. So, wow. Okay. Now, your work on Obama, I want to go back to Obama here because it's just very brief. You've got a lot of print space on Obama in your Substack.
Yep.
Is there anything that we don't know that we should know? Or
people should know that Barack Obama had nothing to do with the death of Osama bin Laden. That was all. That talk about a show. I mean, that whole thing was. See, in 2011, his poll numbers were horrible, and he needed a big ta-da, and he rode "I killed Osama bin Laden" back into the White House in the next year. Well, he had nothing to do with the death of Osama bin Laden, and it started with an article I found in a French newspaper, and it was telling about the death of Osama bin Laden. He died December 16th, 2001.
Yep.
And he had kidney disease and had it for years. In fact, he even had a couple of dialysis machines like where he lived and somewhere else. He had it at several places. But in July of 2001, he was in the American hospital in Dubai and was operated on again by an American doctor. I believe his name was Terry Gallagher, a urologist. And Obama was in the hospital for 2 weeks and left and went back to the Tora Bora Mountains, and which is where he died. on December 16th, 2001. And I found newspaper articles talking about people saying that he had died. And there was even I found his death notice, and it talked about how there were 30 people at his burial in the Toroboro Mountains, and just, his close friends and family. And then it talked about how another article talked about two of his bodyguards who never left his side were seen in January or February of 2002 somewhere else in Pakistan or somewhere. He was never seen after December of 2001. They showed a couple of old videos, but you couldn't hear what he was saying. He looked very ill in the ones that they showed. And the fact that they, I don't know if the SEALs knew.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how.
I don't know if they, I have a friend who is a SEAL. He's obviously retired SEAL, and he said, no, they would never have done anything like that. And I can understand why he would think that way, but there were too many things. They never showed the body. They never showed photos of the body. They never showed a video of them. I know they threw a body off the ship. I have no doubt about that. A neighbor said that they had actually killed the owner of the house. Obama came out on a TV show and said, well, we thought there was a 50-50 chance he was at that house. He was never seen at that house. There would be men seen walking around the courtyard at night, but none of them were tall. Bin Laden was 6'3" or 6'4", and maybe 160 pounds. Even the thing that started me on it was this cop that I used to know said to me, my son-in-law was on the ship, the USS Carl Vinson, which is the ship that the helicopters landed on. And he said that before the helicopters landed, they made all 5,000 sailors go below deck. And I thought, why would they do that? They would want the biggest audience they could possibly have. And a friend of mine at Judicial Watch got for me all the messaging back and forth from CENTCOM to the ship while the helicopters were on the way. And then after they landed, they kept questioning, did any sailors see this? No. Who saw the body being thrown into the ocean or into the North Baltic Sea or whatever it was? And they said there were only about 12 people, and they were very concerned. And then they said, well, we have to have remarks ready for the ship's commander, who was named Perez, when he lands. And what cracked me up is there was a newspaper article where one of the sailors was interviewed. They were all told, don't talk about this because it's very secret. One sailor, when he was interviewed, and he apparently thought it was okay for him to talk, and he said, oh yes, we had a job to do and we did it well. And it's like, you clown, you absolute fool. Yeah. I got to go back and look up his name so I can make fun of him.
Okay. So that was more of obviously a political, very well-timed political move to save a sinking poll numbers, right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And they still talk about Obama killing bin Laden. It never happened. It absolutely never happened.
To me, Bush, well, the Bush family, really pretty much everybody in any national security position in our government had to know that he was gone in 2001. right?
Yeah, well, how about George Bush in on the planning of 9/11?
Okay. Do tell. I mean, your
That's my
findings,
opinion. Yeah, that's what I have. I when I in this thing I recently wrote, I even mentioned how on 9/11 all the planes were ordered out of the sky all
right?
across the country.
Yep.
But on 9/12, 140 Saudis were allowed to fly back to Saudi Arabia. Now, no American was allowed to fly until the 13th. George Bush has been tight with the Saudis. The 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. Did we attack Saudi Arabia? No, we attacked Iraq and Afghanistan, where George Bush had been wanting to go to war forever, and where Cheney's company made for at least $40 billion because of that.
So, you know how you mentioned the flights of the Saudis?
Yep.
They were, just a fun fact here, folks. They were picked up at various locations in the U.S.
Yep. Half a dozen different cities.
Correct. And the coordinator of that was a private investigator that was utilized. Yes, fun fact.
I did not know that.
I'm not going to name the PI, but it's out there for those who want to know. Yeah. And the reason I'm not going to name him, I just don't feel like getting sued again. Okay. So, the Saudi flights, just very curious. Yeah.
And the not attacking Saudi Arabia when the majority of the hijackers were Saudis.
Well, of course, follow the money. And then bring that again to the current day, where now people are horrified to see a painting of George Bush in the Epstein files. And the painting.
Surprise.
Yeah, the painting shows him with a paper airplane sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of two towers. Yeah.
Yep.
Fun.
Yep.
Epstein.
This is what always bothered me is the fact that, they want to do, these hijackers wanted to do great harm to our country.
Uh-huh.
If those flights had been 1 hour later, there would have been 50,000 people working in those two buildings. Not 50,000.
I've often wondered that. And was that timed, intentionally timed that way? Or was that just kind of a screw up?
Well, it took that whole thing took at least a year and maybe several years to plan, because remember they had to send all those guys to flight school,
right?
And that nobody said a word about them going and not caring about learning how to land a plane and paying cash for the schools that they went to. No, I don't know why the people that own these flight schools weren't arrested and put in jail, because they would have known something was going on.
Yes. No, there was a pilot and a flight school owner that one for sure. That's all I know. And to my knowledge, that's all who came forward to prior to 9/11 to say, hey, there's something wrong here. And they reported that to the FBI. The FBI.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't really, it's not accidental. None of this.
No, the timing, 3,000 people was an acceptable number to kill, to stir up America to want to go to war in the Middle East, because we had no appetite for war. But kill 3,000 Americans, and yes, we're going to go to war. Nobody's going to say no.
And the trauma, again, going back to the MK Ultra, the term you used for Obama, that is a classic trauma-based mind changer of the public, 9/11. And yeah, so classic trauma-based event to capture the minds and hearts of otherwise rational people. Yeah. So, and here we are. So do you think, okay, again, because you have folks, she's got great, tremendous investigative capabilities and abilities, and she's got her fingers in a lot of issues. do not think that Susan Daniels is just saving or putting baby killers, making sure they get their comeuppance. But don't think that, because she's got some stuff. What else are we missing? And do you think, where are we now with President Trump, Iran, Ukraine, all of this crap? What's going on?
This Iran is not going to end up well.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that they are running out of space to put oil, because if they shut down those wells, they become unusable in the future. They can't restart them. And I read that they're like 2 days away from being completely don't know what to do next. I think that's why they're trying to play nice all of a sudden. I think we should never trust them for any reason.
Do you think that it was a good decision to do what we did as a country? Yeah. Okay.
I think it had to be done at some point, and better earlier than later, when they would have been farther along. No, I didn't like it, but I think it's something that we really needed to do. And I laughed when when they said, well, we're going to shut the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump goes, no, you're not. I'm going to shut it.
Which, when I heard that and when I thought of that, that to me took me by surprise because I'm thinking, how in the hell, why would he do that? Well, okay, I get it now.
He's doing it to screw up their ability to pump oil.
Exactly. And boy, I'll tell you, that is a problem. When you can't move oil, yeah. And when the recipients, the customers of that oil, specifically, the countries that don't like us, well, they got a problem too.
The ones that would keep taking our money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the meantime, the Gulf of America they've almost doubled the number of ships coming in there for oil. Yes,
which the maps, there are maps out there of the transit maps, maritime transit maps that show a huge influx. Now, I'm still waiting for that to translate into lower prices at the pump. I paid $4.09 a gallon today. What was that about?
Last week I paid $3.33.
I go to your state. I go to Ohio if I'm going to fill up my truck, I go to Ohio because, well, just for that reason. I don't know. Hey, go figure. I should stop by and see you, But anyway, folks, Susan Daniels is my guest, and I've just wanted to talk to her so bad. I do love her investigative work. She's a tremendous private investigator, has been for almost as long as me, but that's okay. But she's done a tremendous amount of work, especially exposing, well, she was the one who exposed Obama, the fraud that he is. What can we do, Susan, to advance prosecution or to make Obama accountable for his...
Well, what Trump said, I heard Trump say last year that Obama was going to get arrested. Now, somebody had queried about what can we do? The country is right now everybody is angry. Nobody trusts the government. Everybody's upset about everything. And my solution is, let's start arresting people, and let's start with Obama and the 51 signers of the letter, the phony letter that said Hunter's laptop didn't exist.
Yes.
It included Brennan. Let's do 52 arrests all the same day and like soon. And let them all have to hire expensive lawyers and start fighting their battle.
You know, I have this feeling, and look, I don't know if arrests are not started, if no one, I mean, if everyone escapes accountability for their sins,
no one will ever trust the government again.
Exactly.
We have, you know what? We have maybe a handful of good Republican senators. The rest, I wouldn't give you a nickel for. The rhino factor is overwhelming.
As you pointed out in Ohio, I mean, really, this is the best we can do, and we expect change. So Solomon came out and said, "Oh, with respect to the Russian collusion, the treason, and that word was used that occurred, that hey, arrests are, they will happen. We can see it through the Department of Justice, and this is after Bondi's departure. So
she should never have been hired.
Oh man,
after what she did to George Zimmerman, after George Zimmerman, had been cleared of the in self-defense of the death of Trayvon Martin by two different investigations.
Yes.
And Pam Bondi gave in to Al Sharpton and Ben Crump and charged him. That's disgraceful.
That was a civil rights violations, right? Or
yeah,
under civil rights, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It was disgraceful. She should never have been hired. Noam should never have been hired. I read, and every so often, I like Trump. I like him as the president. I don't really care for him as a person. And you probably heard that before. But I heard him say that Lewandowski, who had done him some good, asked him to hire Noam, and that's why he hired her.
Now, why don't you like Christie, though?
She's terrible.
That's honest, yeah.
Yeah, she's terrible. She's more interested. Somebody said that they knew her, I think, before she was even the governor of North Dakota. And she was this really down to earth, short brown haircut, real cute looking. And she went berserk with these hair extensions and makeup that was troweled on. And then we see after she gets fired, her husband is like the biggest freak in the country, and that they have borrowed $2.6 million since 2020. I mean, they have lots of money coming in, and they have lots of debt. Now, how could these people not have been vetted? I mean, obviously, Obama was never vetted by anybody. But why wouldn't she have been?
That's a great question, because in our profession, in the state of Ohio, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the vetting of the investigators is required, and it is extensive.
Yep.
So okay, it should apply, and again, folks, the reason I have Susan Daniels on right now, one of many reasons, but one of the reasons is the current climate, much of the current workforce really doesn't have any idea, or maybe some historical reference of really what it takes to get the job done. Okay. And it's not behind a computer. It's not, we can't rest on certain technological things and expect things. So, but because Susan Daniels has been there, she's carried the dimes in her pocket or purse or both to look for a phone booth. She's carried I've carried the subway tokens for New York City and for other. She's put the miles on. She's done the interviews. She's risked her backside. And I want to just share this with you and see if you have any similar occurrences. When you were talking about working the baby case, sad story, by the way. I was one of the most unexpected pieces of information I ever got. I was serving some subpoenas for a law firm, which, I never really cared to do. I just, okay, give them to me. I'll get to them when I get to them, or give them to me. I got to go that way anyway, so fine. And I actually served a subpoena. The thing was contested. I had to go, long story short, I ended up before testifying in court to verify the proper process of it, or the legal process of a subpoena. And it was disclosed to me that when I did, before the door was open, the recipient of that subpoena was holding a 12-gauge shotgun, wondering to himself whether he should pull the trigger on the 12-gauge through the closed door and take me out, because that's where his mind was. And I'm thinking, boy, you know what? For the $20 or whatever it was for service, Nah, I don't think so. Not anymore. So, anyway.
Well, I stopped doing them when the last time I served somebody in the parking lot of a wedding, and this guy who I was serving came out with his girlfriend, and they were both pretty drunk, and she was carrying a wine glass. It turns out they were going out to a car to get high, and she broke the glass on my head. Okay?
Jeez.
So the cop comes, like within 30 seconds, there was a cop there, and the ambulance comes and takes me to the hospital. Well, I'm covered with wine, and they're picking glass out of my hair, right?
Oh, my gosh.
They think I have been in a bar fight.
Of course. Yeah,
I said,
how much of it drink?
Yeah. I do not drink. I said, I stopped 30 some years ago. Stop being fun, man.
And those little things, again, there's life lessons in those little things that I hope the younger people today kind of get to experience stuff like that. Not because you want them hurt, but you know what? Think on your feet. Understand that there are dangers out there. But things that will prepare you for the bigger issues. That's just,
Right.
Yeah. And your stuff has been your investigative work products, which again, folks, on Substack, I urge everyone to subscribe. It's free. Subscribe. And your book on Amazon. I'm going to tell you what, it's got a very unique flavor to it. And that's not hollow praise. That's just the way it is. And man,
Thank you.
I'll tell you, after seeing after seeing your work a year and a half ago, or roughly whatever that was, relentless and fearless. So.
The interesting thing, Doug, is now I have 7 children, and not one of them is interested in what I'm doing or anything I have done in terms of private investigation or Obama or Substack or any of it. They're totally unimpressed and disinterested.
Okay, so as a PI, or the PI work, I can almost forgive that. Excuse me. However, the findings on Obama and what you did, how far you carried that, how do you explain that? Because that seems to be like the attitude of everybody.
I can't explain it to you. I really can't. It's disappointing to me, but Bill Marshall, who who works at Judicial Watch. Great guy. I'm sure you know him. One time he's done all kinds of great things for Judicial Watch. And I said, are your kids proud of you? And he said, no, they have no interest. And I thought, I felt exonerated. I said, hey, it isn't just me.
And that's the thing. I guess, how would you put that? The tendency or the desire to be inquisitive, to kind of on the level of, well, not on the level of Sherlock Holmes, but because he had the deductive qualities,
right.
But the desire to get to the truth of a matter.
And you know what? And I'm not anywhere near done, Doug.
I know.
I will hound Obama till the day I die.
And I will keep asking you, how can I help? Put me in, Coach. I'm ready to play. How can I help?
Oh, I'm writing that down.
I'll tell you what, I do owe you, and folks, I'll say this, I owe her a debt probably I would never be able to repay because of, again, a year and a half, long story, not going to get into it, don't want to, but I'll say this, poking some bears, and they poke back, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Anything that we need to know, anything that we should, so we only have a few minutes left, and it's been such an honor and pleasure to talk with you. It's fun.
Oh, it's so fun to talk to you, Doug. I always enjoy it.
What have we not, of all the things that we should have said, maybe.
We need to talk about getting the politicians that are in office out of office and start fresh.
As you were saying that, I was picturing this arcade with a shooting gallery. Okay, no, not that. I'm talking about the targets going down. Like a hole or something like that. Yeah. Okay, not this. That's probably a bad example. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, one down and two, more to go. We have to do that. But is there a way we can do that through the judicial system that you're familiar with, that I'm familiar with? Will that work?
I don't know. You can't make people care. That's the problem. And now people would rather sit and think about their lives and play with their phones rather than face the reality of what our country is in very desperate shape right now, and people do not and will not acknowledge that. And I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know. I don't have any answers to that, and I'd like to talk to somebody who does. And it's just it amazes me. I guess it shouldn't surprise me, Susan, but it amazes me how we look at, or how many people are really pushing their own agenda. Screw everything else. I'm going to push my own agenda.
I got mine. That's the attitude. I got mine.
Yeah, and too bad for you is the other part of that sentence. Wow. Yep. But folks, at a time when the niceties, the easy stuff wasn't available to Susan, to myself, we were out there getting stuff done. And Susan Daniels, again, the person, everything about the Social Security number, everything that you hear started with Susan Daniels, her investigation. And you can read more about that whole process and where it's at today on her Substack. And I would urge you to subscribe. Susan Daniels, the link will be in the program description box. And for extra credit, get her book, because her book tells her story, and her story is important. Susan, thank you. We're out of time. My gosh.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me.
It was fun. It really was. I don't know. People will never know. And that, to me, that's sad. A lot of people will never know what it was like to really do the work in the field like you.
Uh-uh.
And man, wow. Well, God bless him. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Again, folks, Susan Daniels, God, I'll tell you what, just a tremendous woman, integrity, character, and a lot of spunk. Let me tell you, do not get between her and something to solve. Don't do that. Dangerous. All right. Okay, kind of like standing between Obama and a TV camera. I don't know. Folks, that'll do it. Remember, Thursday night is going to be Steve Quayle, Michael Leon. And I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you very much for subscribing to Rumble. And yes, I did mean what I said in the chat, because you know what? Some people just keep poking and poking and poking. Don't do that. All right. Thank you for joining me. God bless everyone. Have a good night.